Welcome to Comms in a Nutshell, your go-to place to listen to discussions with industry experts and global brands about the world of work, internal comms, technology, and how you can get the best out of your workforce. At the end of each episode, we wrap up all the tips and findings in a nutshell so that you can start implementing them right away. In this episode, myself and Scott speak to Cara De Lange. Cara is a wellbeing consultant, author, and international burnout expert. Cara founded her company, Softer Success. She empowers some of the world's leading organisations and their employees to proactively prevent burnout. Cara's powerful program, Prevent Burnout, Find Balance, enables individual clients and corporate teams to create a harmonious, peaceful, and productive life. With over 20 years' experience in fast-paced multinational companies such as Google and Saatchi & Saatchi, Cara is passionate about helping people look after their well-being. Cara is also an associate of the International Stress Management Association and a member of the organising committee for International Stress Awareness Week. Cara's company, Softer Success, are also a company who practices a 4-day week, and we'll be chatting to her about how it works for them, why they're behind the 4-day week movement, as well as how to prevent burnout. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to Comms in a Nutshell. In this episode, we're going to be exploring the future of work, different working patterns such as the 4-day work week, and different ways of approaching how we work. And today we're joined by wellbeing expert, author, and founder of Softer Success, Cara De Lange. So, Cara, before we get into the episode, do you want to tell the listeners a bit more about yourself and how you came to be where you are today?
Yes, thank you, Victoria, and hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. So I run Softer Success, and we're a mental health and wellbeing consultancy. And I've had many years of experience working in tech, international companies all over the world. And what really led me to set this up, and we're specialized actually in helping people prevent burnout. And that's where my big passion comes out, because many, many years ago, I was working for a large tech company, and thought I managed my stress all quite well, actually, because we all have a little bit of stress, right? And sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. And we do need a little bit of stress to get things done. But I got to a point of burnout, and I hadn't seen it coming. And in the heart of this burnout, I went to see a wonderful sleep and energy expert, a lovely lady called Dr. Narina Ramlakan. And she said to me, she said, what's happened to you? This is a gift. And I went, no, this is awful. This is not a gift. This is terrible. I mean, I'm suffering from, I can't sleep properly. I'm feeling really worn down. My shoulders were really sore. And that was actually the kickstart to my recovery, because what I realized is that I had been really hard on myself. And the reason I hadn't seen it coming is I just hadn't tuned in, and I wasn't aware really what burnout was. And that was the kickstart to my recovery. And what it led to was that I started helping people at work. And that's how it all started. And I just started to think, well, right, actually, what I didn't see, let's help other people avoid going through this. And what I didn't see. So I completely retrained. And yes, and so now what we really do is help raise awareness about burnout, help people understand what it is, and help them prevent it. And that goes across individuals, teams, and organizations, because if you're going to look at changing culture or doing things differently in an organization, in a business, and looking at different ways of working, we need to do it all together. Yeah. And that's really sort of how I got to it. And I wrote a book about it, and we now do all kinds of research on it, working together with the University of Sheffield and King's College on all kinds of things about burnout at the moment that are coming up, also to do with the pandemic. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Do you find that you offer the same advice to each business to prevent burnout, or is it different depending on the business?
It's completely different depending on the business. I mean, I think there are some structural things that research has shown us and that we know. I mean, there's a lot of talk about something called psychological safety, which, creating that trust within teams and across organizations. And this really important. And we know that across the board, and that there's wide research on that. We know that that's important as a baseline. But in terms of helping organizations, and we specifically also work with startups and some of the future, the big growing companies at the moment, is making sure that I call it future proofing, the well-being plans that they're set up with a framework that works for that particular organization. And everybody's different. And what we do is we help people measure burnout with an assessment tool, with the motto of, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, right? And somebody that may think they're at burnout may actually not be, or somebody that may think they're not at risk may be at risk. So what we're doing is help people measuring the risk of it, not actually giving them medical diagnosis, because you need to go to a doctor for that, but it's really helping people identify that risk. And that works quite well for individuals, but also for teams, going, hey team, how are we doing? What is it that we need to navigate and change, and what's our risk looking like this week? So it's an anonymous tool, and again, it's a way of helping to prevent.
That's great.
So I know, Cara, as well, you've got kind of, you're CEO of the business Softer Success. And when did you, as a company, make the switch to a 4-day week, or has that always kind of been, the kind of one of the foundations of the business?
Yeah, I've actually always done it since setting up the business. I said, okay, that we need to work differently, and there's no reason why. I mean, 90 years ago, it was decided we needed a 5-day work week and work so many hours. But what's to say that we need to do that now, with the technology so advanced as it is, with things that are automated, with all kinds of things. And so I made a conscious decision to say, I'm going to run a business while working 4 days a week. So I could see for my own productivity that this was so good, because I don't work Friday. So again, that's often different for some of the people that work at Softer Success. It's another day. And I really noticed that this helped my productivity and helped me be sustainably productive. And I think that's where we want to get with the 4-day work week. And I liked it so much that I then connected with Joe Ryle of the 4-day work week campaign earlier this year, and said, look, we want to pledge towards this and really formalize it. And so it's 4 days a week, same pay. And I think that's very important to notice. And it's been hugely successful in quite a few countries. There's an amazing case study on it from New Zealand and Iceland. And, it's now launched in the US. And I think some countries will take a longer while to adopt it than some businesses. But there's no reason why this could not work. And again, this fits in with revolutionizing the way we work, and let's all try this. Again, we all thought that we worked best in an office, and for some people that may still be the case. However, many of us have been working from home continuously for the last year and a half, and the productivity hasn't gone down for lots of businesses, which has also shown us that we can be more agile, we can be more flexible, we can work in different ways that suits the individual. And I think that's just what I want to say there, is that what works for one doesn't work for the other.
Yeah.
So the 4-day work week, I think, should be an option. It's optional.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to hire somebody that said, well, actually, for me, 5 days is best, or I prefer working 4.5 days, or I prefer just, so I think it's just about hearing what that person will help them be more productive and sustainably productive. And that's what we want to get, not productive in sort of bursts, but actually keep going productive in that continuous way, right? Where we feel healthy and well, we're energized. And yeah, we'll have more moments that we're, feeling more stressed than other days, and that's normal. But it's also about managing that.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think you touched on it there, which is going to be one of our next questions was, for you, how do you work it? Can everybody pick their own day off throughout the week, or is it kind of a set business day?
Yeah, so it's still fairly new. So at the moment we sort of said Fridays, but actually we, giving people the option to choose. And as we're growing, there's sometimes the choice of actually, let's make sure we have sort of coverage on every day, but each person gets their slot, because I prefer the Friday, but that may not work for, some people may say, oh, I don't like Mondays, I don't like working on Mondays, so I'll take Monday. Or actually, I like the middle of the week. Is quite good to have a bit of a breather and dedicate some time to myself and just, decompressing. And so I think it's, again, it really needs to be ask the individual, ask the team what they prefer. And I kind of keep going back, the way that I think of this and the way that I think of sort of flexible working is, and I was speaking to my intern about that and saying, going back in time, people used to work in guilds, right? And they were supporting each other, and there was flexibility. And when one person couldn't do something, someone else jumped in, and, it was led by these guilds. So there wasn't, managers at the top. Yes, it had to, but they worked together very strongly as a team. And I'm seeing businesses that are doing that are kind of more flat organizations becoming quite successful, and keeping the employees sustainably productive. And there's this ownership, isn't there, of like, well, as a team, we're going to make this work. And so I really see that as one of the future ways of working. There's more autonomy, there's more control over the workload, but there's also a real collaboration, and real kind of looking after and caring. And there is a psychological safety within a team that has that.
What do your employees kind of say about it then?
We've only got 2 at the moment, so
really?
we're quite
Okay.
small.
Yeah.
So we're growing. So we're growing, but so we're still quite small, but we are growing. And what do they say? So again, I spoke to them about that and said, what do you like the most, and what do you find that is useful? And I think one of the biggest answers that came back was to know that I have that time, that time that's going to come back to me, that I can decide what I want to do, that I can relax on that day, and it brings back some energy for the next chunk of work. And right, so again, we do need to decompress, and if we keep going all the time, initially that's why they said 5 days a week and 2 days a weekend, but we're all switched on a lot of the time. So how can we, if we could manage that in a slightly different way, wouldn't things become more flexible, right? So
Yeah,
okay, 80% of us actually work out of the hours that sort of we've been given, if we're saying working Monday to Friday, and a lot of people work weekends and holidays. And why is that? Because we do like a bit of flexibility. And if somebody wants to check a few things on a Sunday because it makes them feel calmer on a Monday, then that's our choice to do, right? But then at one point further on in the week, there needs to be a moment where there is a balance, right? So there is a switch off time later on in the week. And I think that's what people often forget. So maybe do that on Sunday, and then I've got a really busy week ahead, and I'll go. And then I get to Friday and feel exhausted, and still not on top of things. So do that again. So maybe you'll need to work the whole day next Sunday to catch up. So you see, there's no decompressed time in that kind of outlook. So it's about having, okay, if I'm done that this week, where am I going to find a slot for rest, for a little bit of time for me, for some exercise, for a bit of time for deep work. So I love that. It was something that we recommend at Softer Success, is about people finding time to book in deep work, which was a term coined by Professor Cal Newport of Georgetown University. And it's about really working without any distractions. And funnily enough, talking to a neuroscientist who's on our advisory board, said, well, we're not born to multitask. The brain doesn't like multitasking, and that it takes the brain the same energy to check a social media post as it does to, work on a project, or write something, so or fine line whatever details you're doing for your work. So again, it's our choice, right? Thinking about this actively, and when I'm working, can I actually switch my phone to airplane mode for an hour? Can I turn off all the other Chrome, thing, I was going to say apps, but they're not apps, but pages that I have up? Could I make sure that I'm put my phone on silent and not getting notifications, and be aware and think, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm not going to look at that right now, because I know that's going to get my brain more tired, and I want to focus on this task, right? So it's making the choices for ourselves instead of, oh, I'm distracted, I don't want to work on this project, maybe I'll just check my phone, check social media. But that happens to us all.
I'm reading a book. Oh, you go, Scott.
I was just saying, it's so easy to do, isn't it? Your phone is never really leaves your side, and it's there all the time. So
I'm reading a book at the moment. It's called Working Hard or Hardly Working by Grace Beverly, and she kind of talks a lot about that, and she talks about getting into like the deep flow of work, and she gives loads of recommendations on like what you can do and tasks you can do before to help you get into it. And I feel like it's helped the way I work, and now I try to think, right, well, I definitely want to have 2 hours where I try and really get into that deep work, and then you're like a lot more creative, a lot more productive, and you just feel a lot more motivated about it. So yeah, and it's about being aware of that, right? And think, I'm actively going to turn off everything when I have to really, if we're in a creation mode, or if I've been in writing mode, or when I was writing my book again, I put my phone away, it would put it in another room even, and just had everything off and just focused on that. And sometimes it doesn't work, right? And you're like, oh, my creativity's, or it's not focused. So you just take a break, and maybe it's focusing on some breathing, or just actually coming back into your body. I mean, those are kind of individual techniques that I always say to people, why don't you give your hands a rub and just feel your hands for me, because we're so in our head, and we're so focused on our screens. It's actually just coming back into your body. Tap your feet on the floor. Some super simple techniques that will get us back in, and will get us maybe a little bit more energized, and will get us back into, all right, okay, so I'm pushing myself really hard, but nothing's happening. So maybe it's time to take a little break. Maybe it's just time to go and get a glass of water, being so hard on ourselves as well. Because it's not necessarily about the amount of time you work, it's about how you're doing that work, and whether it's productive, and whether you're in it really. I think we're talking about, with this experiment that we're doing, we've kind of said, like, it's not about the hours that you're working, it's the work that you are doing, and whether the productivity output is good or not. So we're in the midst of it right now, and we've had some interesting feedback so far.
So you guys are experimenting with a 4-day work week, so that's really exciting. And has the feedback been positive or mixed, or what have you had?
It's been mixed, because we're also trying kind of the 5-hour work day between people, and like last week I did the 5-hour work day, and I was speaking to one of my colleagues who did the 4-day work week last week. And I think it's almost telling what you said there about stop being so hard on yourselves, because we both, when we're trying this, we both came away and thought, I kind of felt a little bit guilty, like when I finished, I did 8 till 1, so like I finished in the afternoon on like on Monday, and then Emma, my colleague, was saying she did the 4-day work week and was off on Friday, and we're both saying, like, you just feel a little bit guilty, because it's kind of so ingrained in you that you kind of work this set pattern that you've always done. But yeah, I think the 4-day week seems to be a bit more easier to adapt to than the 5-hour workday. We've kind of gone from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, I think the consensus being, because a lot of people have tried the 5-hour workday, and I think one of the girls on the design team, she said that she was really productive, and she literally worked for the 5 hours straight. She got so much done, but I felt like I struggled. I felt like I was stressed.
I was constantly watching the clock and I couldn't really relax as such. So I think I'm looking forward to the 4-day work week, and a lot of people that I've spoke to, they've said, oh, I'm a bit more excited to try that because I feel like it's more realistic to do rather than a 5-hour work day. Definitely.
And it's not to say we may not get to a 5-hour work day, or maybe even a 6-7 hour work day instead of an 8 one. That's not to say we're not, but we've got a lot of mindset changing to do. And exactly as you said, Scott, there's a lot ingrained, and that's what's so exciting about this time now that we're working, is that revolution isn't necessary. We do need to reset the whole thinking patterns about how we work and unlearn some unhealthy habits that we've built up over the years. And I think that's really, really interesting. So I think that's such a great experiment that you guys are doing, and it helps you as an individual, right? So as you said, Victoria, okay, so that actually caused you more stress than you thought. So you already know that pattern doesn't work for you. So this is what this experiment is so good, because you're finding out what works for the individual and what works for the team. Obviously understand that not all businesses have the space to do this, but giving the employees the flexibility and the opportunity to try, I think, is really, really positive. And again, the more flexibility and autonomy we have, the more we can do to prevent burnout. Burnout sits with our individual and how we know ourselves, right? And again, the whole reason I created Softer Success, and that the name already says it, is the whole reason about Softer Success was we can actually be sustainably productive and not be so hard on ourselves all the time and not push ourselves all the time. It's all about taking things within the flow and making sure that we're not going over that edge over into burnout. So there's a lot we can do as individuals. The deep work really helps. We do know that we work towards our ultradian rhythms. So every 90 minutes, the body goes through the same sort of cycle that we have at night. So at night we have circadian rhythms, a basic rest and activity cycle. And during the day, we have something called the ultradian rhythm, which is a similar cycle, except we're awake. But that means every 90 minutes, we'll have a peak of concentration, and then that will kind of go down again. Again, it's be very aware of that. So little micro breaks. It's after those 90 minutes that we'll be like, I now need a cup of coffee, or I need that sugary snack, or I need something, because our concentration has gone down. And what we really want to do at that time is go, okay, I'm going to do a little micro wellness of 60 seconds, and again, rub the hands together, just stand up and have a stretch, shake the body up. It could be anything, but being aware of that, I think, is number one. So there's a lot that we can do as individuals, as teams. It's about working towards creating psychological safety, and one thing that we're just beginning to do some research on is seeing burnout and something called moral injustice, the links of that. So that's when we've seen something at work or in our working environment that goes against our own personal values and belief. And that's so important at the moment, as we're all working towards our meaning and our purpose. And something that's really come out of the pandemic is that people really want that. Why are so many people resigning from their jobs and changing? Is because they want to, it's about something they may not have been happy with, or change, or, what can I do to, we want to work towards creating a better environment. We want to work towards creating better well-being and health. And so why not incorporate that and make sure that we work on that as teams as well, right? And then the organization can obviously look at things and help their employees, and should even, in my opinion, should even be part of organizations' missions and values. We as a company agree to provide you the best possible training that we can to help you look at preventing burnout, help you find balance, be sustainably productive, to develop psychological safety, to lead with compassion. As an organization, we agree to help you, that time off is okay, and that is allowed. And, well-being, in my opinion, again, well-being should be part of performance reviews. It should be, a performance review should have the equal amount of a well-being section, to be honest, because, and our own personal health and well-being. why should we not have it there, right? Because our health and well-being affect our performance.
It does. I think we at Oak, we have a very good culture and attitude surrounding well-being. But what would you suggest to companies then that kind of haven't got that at the moment? How can they start to implement that?
Yeah, I think the first step is learning about psychological safety and leading with compassion, leading with empathy. And I like to say, for everybody, we run a course on that, but ideally everybody attends that, because that gives the future leaders the option to tweak, things, and it gives everybody a chance to lead. It's inclusive, it feels right. Why do just managers and leaders have to do it? What could all in the company attend? and we actually work with a startup that did do that for everybody, and they received really great feedback on it.
That's good.
So that would be one of my tips. And measure, again, look at measuring, assessing the risk of burnout. That is hugely important, because again, if we can't, in a scientifically backed way, so this is what we found, is that so many people still think that burnout is just exhaustion. It's not. There's a negativity and cynicism that kicks in for a longer period of time. Yes, we're less productive. Yes, there can be some moral injustice there. There are a whole lot of other little factors that people may or may not be aware of. They're the secondary symptoms, so they're the physical symptoms that we feel, or things that happen in our body. And so what we're doing is trying to help people be aware of that, be aware to look out for and measure that. And then, and in our assessment, a little heat map comes up with, so, great, this is how you can work towards preventing it, and blah, 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 this is what you can do. So resources are provided. So I hope that's helpful.
Amazing. Yeah, it is.
With some of the businesses you've worked with, do you kind of see, or is there a pattern on like obstacles or roadblocks to adapting kind of, some of the ways to better work, or the 4-day work week, or on the whole, is it kind of they're very receptive to all the suggestions?
Yeah, there's a huge receptivity to suggestions, but what we often need to do is create the blend, right? So the managers and leaders may have operated in a certain way. There's a culture within the organization where people again operate in a certain way. And so we need to understand that. And you can't change it until you understand it and why that is. And, you create a culture in a business. I mean, I'm aware of that. We're really small, but already with a couple of employees, you have a culture, right? You're creating a culture. So it's about being aware of that, no matter how big or small you are. And some of the larger organizations, a lot is really fragmented, and they may have a lot of benefits, or they may have a lot of things to help people's well-being, but they may not always know, the individual may not know how to find that. Mm-hmm. So again, it's that, helping them, direct them in the right way. That's another thing we do with our assessment. We kind of help redirect back to not only share our own resources, but back to any company benefits or things that the business has created, because that's really important too. And at the moment, it's really quite a, there's a mismatch. There's often a mismatch. So there may be an HR team or a wellbeing team that's wanting to create something that's very much aware of things, but then you still have your C-suite leadership that are going, yeah, great, but no, we gotta see the return on investment. So we do, every organization is different. It starts with awareness. We now know from the pandemic that well-being should be at the forefront, but we're no way near there yet. Yeah. What causes burnout for somebody working in a bank or a lawyer is so different to a doctor, is so different to a tech startup. Some of the key factors are quite similar, but others are different, and we've got to be aware of that, and organizations need to be aware of that as well. And the word needs to be used. So there's still a stigma on the word burnout, which we're smashing through the wall, but there still is. So if you ask your individual team, or a small team or a large team, and say, right, let's talk about burnout, everybody will go, is it being recorded? I don't really want to speak, but I don't want anybody to know, or I don't, so what we're trying to do is bring that out in the open, because the only way, and it's the same with a health problem, like a physical health problem, right? Like, we why do we get these ergonomic assessments to sit properly in our chair, right? The only way that we're going to help prevent things with our back, or poor posture, or misalignment, and for later in our life, we need to look at ways to prevent it, and we need to talk about it, and somebody needs to come along and assess that, right? And then help you create changes. It's the same thing with burnout. Talk about it. Let's find out what it really is. Let's understand it. Let's measure the risk of it. And then let's help look preventing it.
Do you think that a 4-day work week is universally achievable for all businesses, or do you think it depends?
It depends. I think that will depend, and that will depend on which businesses decide to ask their employees what they want, and which kind of will dictate as in what it is that's expected. And so I'm not going to say that will work for every single organization. Again, we need to have that flexibility, and for some business it may not work, but there may be another option that works. They may go for we were also said we had to work 8 hours a day. Why could they not? Maybe there'll be other businesses that say we're adapting and moving to 7, or moving to 6. That's more suitable for us, but we're doing it 5 days a week. So it's got to be open and flexible across the world, because may not work for every business across the world. But what I think the big message here is let's look at working flexibly, and let's create different patterns to suit individuals, so that we can all be more sustainably productive and prevent burnout.
Yeah, because it's not just necessarily the 4-day work week, is it? There's different start times, flexible hours and things like that. So I think it's about focusing on individuals and what they need, because like you said, not everyone is the same.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm seeing that with some businesses now, with sort of coming back into work. I like to say post-pandemic, let's be optimistic, right? And so now, post the lockdown period, and some are dictating it, saying, well, we want you in 3 days a week. So we want to have you in 3 days a week. Others are saying, pick and choose. Others are saying, actually, we want you fully back, because we've seen we think that's the best way of working. And they have to find that out, right? If they start the ones that have said full time, and people are back on the commute, and they're seeing that, burnout levels are going up, maybe that's it's time for them to amend.
Yeah.
It's different. We have to keep changing it.
What would be your top tips to prevent burnout?
Okay, so for the individual, make sure you look at planning some deep work in your week, whether it's just an hour, that you make sure you switch everything off and you're just focusing on that one particular thing. Touch back in with your body from time to time, even if it's tapping your feet on the floor and feeling your hands. And something else that we've seen that's really effective is, I call it planning your joy. So this is a mindset thing, where you're asking, we don't tend to plan joy, it's more spontaneous, but we've seen effectively more productivity if people plan in their joy. And that's again, it's your mind that's saying, joy is often more spontaneous, but what really brings me joy, and I'm going to pay attention to that. For some, it's that warm beverage that they drink. For others, it's being mindful of that, right? Instead of going, oh, work, it's all work and got no time and it's all back to back. You can certainly find 60 seconds to just take back and go, I'm just opening the window and getting some fresh air. I mean, I think it's the most simple thing. One of our clients, I asked him, what brings you joy? And he said, well, that's just kicking a ball around with my son. So he just changed his schedule around a bit so that he'd have 10-15 minutes to do that a couple of times in the week. So, it's just about thinking, where can I factor that in? And do I really have to be back to back? I mean, for me, it's going for quick walk in the morning, or having a moment to just get outside, or having a bit time for a bit of meditation. And that's all what I call my time, with the time the mini wellness bits that I take back in the day. So it doesn't all have to be, oh, it's all work, it's all, take it back, right?
Yeah.
Take some time for yourself, even if it's 60 seconds, and plan your joy, and put your mindset to that too.
What are your favorite ways of winding down and having balance?
Yeah, so I combat, so at the moment we're quite busy with, our assessment tool and getting that out. So I'm very careful in how I plan my day, make sure that I don't have too many back-to-backs. And if I do, then I always make sure that before I may go one to the next, I do a quick qigong exercise. Have you guys ever heard of qigong? It's really cool. It's similar to Tai Chi, but it brings your energy up. So so have a quick look. There's some really fun videos on YouTube, and and so I do one of those briefly just before going. So that's again my joy. That's my moment. I do use deep breathing, breath work, and meditation. It works really well, because one thing I realized when I did go through my burnout is that I didn't breathe properly, and so this exacerbated a lot of sort of feelings of stress. So I focus on that. 80% of us hold our breath when we're checking emails. So there's something for you to be aware of. It's about checking my emails and my breathing, right? All of these little things.
I've started going to yoga, and I didn't realize my breathing isn't great at all. And I think when you go, you become so much more aware when you do things like that, of how to actually make your body feel calm. After yoga, I feel so calm. It's incredible. So it's about finding things individually that make you feel balanced. But for some people, it might not be yoga. Not everybody's yoga. And for some people, it's going on a walk, reading a book. I think getting outside's definitely good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I was going to say, you do that downward dog to get your breathing going. So for a lot of people, that does really help. So yeah, we're all individuals, and it's about, I think that's our biggest fun and interesting kind of quest that we can do in terms of navigating a work reset revolution, is working out what works for us, what works for you as the individual, like what works for you, and what may work for me, and doing some qigong exercises and deep breathing may not work for somebody else, right? And your yoga may not work. So we just got to be more self-aware. So self-awareness is huge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one other question that we want to ask is, obviously employees might not know that they're burned out. They might not know what it is. And obviously, if you're at work, how can businesses take some form of responsibility and ensure that their employees aren't burning out?
Do our assessment. That's the best way, because it's a scientifically backed method that really we understand and helps us understand the risk of burnout. And I think as an organization, that is more than it's so important to also ask employees what they want, but more than that, it's almost the best thing you can do is to help employees understand what that risk is, and then help them prevent it. So measuring, it's the only way, because we're otherwise going to get into this whole thing of I feel burnt out. Are you not? Is it something else? How do you know if it is or not? And people just don't know, because it's a bit of a buzzword. And what we're trying to do is say, right, actually, yes, it may be a buzzword, but let's get to the actual, understanding what it is. When we understand, we can then help you prevent.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, thank you so much for chatting to us. Your knowledge is invaluable,
and it's been really great to talk to you guys, and I just love that you are all doing this experiment to see what way of working works best. I mean, what better thing could a business do to give their employees a little bit of autonomy, a little bit of freedom to understand what works for them or what doesn't.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll all keep you posted with the results.
Do, yes, I'd love to hear.
Okay, right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. From this episode, there are a few key findings that we can wrap up in a nutshell. Number 1, productivity isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Each individual and enterprise works completely differently, so it's important to consider that when testing out new initiatives, such as the 4-day week, and it's important to find out what works for each person. If you're thinking of doing something like this, why not get feedback from your employees first and see how they feel and how it could work for you? Number 2, it's important to make choices when approaching work tasks that will enable us to engage in deep work. So things like switching off any distractions, putting your phone in another room, or really just sitting down and getting prepared for the task at hand. Number 3, giving your employees the flexibility to incorporate the little things that bring them joy and balance into their workday will help massively with their well-being and keeping your employees engaged and productive. Again, we'd like to thank Cara for being a wonderful guest on this episode and sharing her insights with us, and we really hope you enjoyed them too. See you again for the next episode.